We are in a first line day. We're looking at gate 4, which is the gate of formalization, youthful folly. And the first line is called pleasure. Isn't that lovely? Pleasure. The foundation of the hexagram in this fourth gate is pleasure. There is a pleasure in logic. Have you found this to be true as we've been going through these gates and lines of the very logical human design system? Can you find pleasure in the way that it's playing out, the logic of it all? There can be a kind of mental awakening when we grasp something logical, and that can also be a deep pleasure. The first line is always the foundation, and it's always introspective. That's its nature. And this first line is called pleasure. So when you have the fourth gate, you can come to understand that the whole thing about answers is that they're pleasurable. And maybe you can start to sort of tap into the fact that when you give an answer, it's an authentic, real answer, that you get a little frisson somehow. It's like, oh, nice. And it's a first line. First line likes to dig into the foundation. The first line loves its answers. So maybe if you have this first line, or any first line because of genetic continuity, how does it feel when you dig up an answer to something? Are you aware of a sense of pleasure that comes up? Because there is a pleasure in getting an answer. This is why logic is so seductive for us. It's necessary that it's seductive for us. It brings us pleasure to have answers. The lifetime learning here is ultimate pleasure cannot be achieved without perfect timing. To give an answer at the wrong time can be disastrous. People have to be ready for what you're going to give them. Even better if they invite you to share your answers, because this is a projector gate. Logic is not something that is uprooted once it's in. No, it's not. Once it's been accepted and it's been tested and tried, it takes hold. It gets planted in the mental system. And if it's correct, it stays there. The channel 515, that's a channel that runs between the G center and the sacral. So it's sort of the identity of the logical system. You could see in a way that it generates the identity of the logical system. Ultimate pleasure cannot be achieved without perfect timing. So timing, this comes up so often. Timing is everything. Yeah, timing is perfect and timing is natural when you are living out your true nature. When you enter into any experience correctly, just the experience of life, everything you do, if you're entering into it correctly, then there is this potential because the timing is right. So in the exaltation, the instinct to know the right moment and circumstances where pleasure is rewarded and not punished. The potential to recognize that there is a natural timing to the understanding process. There is a natural timing. You cannot push the river. It doesn't matter if our timing is fast or slow. We each have our own unique timing, and it can only be found when we are living out our nature. This is a gate that begins the most important mental process that we have as a collective, and it's rooted in timing. You know, it says that everybody's timing is going to be their own. And you can't know what that is unless you live it out naturally. You can give an answer at one time and have a very angry response. You give an answer at another time and everybody is happy. Same is true for correction, which is part of this same circuit. One moment you offer correction to somebody and they think you're bitching, and then the next moment that very same thing can be life-changing. It's all about the timing. In the detriment, we have timing is not a product of discipline. Exaggerated self-discipline leads to the abuse of pleasure. The potential to recognize, but the urge to force the timing. Timing is not a product of discipline. So don't interfere with the river. Don't get involved. So many people, they think that they have to come up with an answer at a certain time. And our institutions, they create that. They force us to come up with answers, like exams, for example. You know, that particular time of the year where you all sit in a big room with an exam paper and the pressure is on and you've got to get the right answers down. You know, sometimes we're just confronted with an on-the-spot question. And then again, we get that stress and that pressure to come up with an answer. Very few human beings really are allowed their natural timing in order to come up with an answer that is truly valuable, that is also pleasurable, and that is not punished. The moment that you are entering properly into any kind of a situation, you're going to be allowed your own timing. And then you don't end up with those sorts of difficulties. The most important thing for anyone who has a fourth gate is to understand that they do not decide their own timing. And yet, at the same time, they are always ready for it. They're always ready for the right timing. There's a potential to recognize that there's a natural timing to the understanding process, and it's not about deciding anything from the mind, certainly. It's about being open and seeing what comes and just trusting that it's going to come in its correct timing. In order for an answer to be valid, it still has to go through a process. It has to become an opinion. It has to get the details. It has to still be experimented with. It has to go through that whole process. The answer is not the end of the process at all. The answer is the beginning of the process. People who have this detriment, they always want to give you an answer at the wrong time. You're busy and they have the answer and they won't let you do your thing because they've got to give you their answer. And when you do not appreciate it, then it's not shared properly. The first line doesn't really know about the other side. You know, they don't know that there's really someone that has to be shared with correctly. And the key in all of this is just understanding the nature of timing and to be ready in that understanding, and then you don't get punished. And being punished in this context it's about your answer not being noticed. It's about your answer being unappreciated or unrecognized. That's punishment enough if you have the fourth gate in the first line. So the grounding is in gate 49, the gate of revolution. And this is, the first line is called the law of necessity. So the gate of revolution, it's also the gate of sacrifice, gate 49. It's got a lot going on, gate 49. Pleasure is rooted in the logical necessity of sacrifice. Doesn't sound terribly pleasurable to me. Perhaps we could look at that in a different way. Maybe it's more to do with the necessity of pleasure to the logical circuit, the necessity of finding pleasure in doubts and answers, the pleasure that can be found when the timing is correct and you don't have to do anything about it. You just slip into that place where it's correct. Maybe. So the moon is still in gate 28. It's been there since 3:36 this morning, BST again, of course. This is preponderance. It's the gate of the game player. It's the gambler. So when we look at the preponderance of the small, which we've had before, the preponderance of the small indicates detail. This is how the Chinese used to say, this is how you know we're talking about detail, we're going to call it the small. And we have it in a couple of places, you know, in 62 and in 9. But here we have the preponderance of the great. So what's the great, do you suppose? Because this gate is all about finding the meaning in life, finding the thing that is worth fighting for, that gives life its meaning. So perhaps that is what the great is. So we stay in the splenic center, and the moon is moving into the tribal gate 44 at 14:55. And this is called coming to meet. It's the gate of alertness. And it tells us that the success of any interaction is based on the absence of preconditions. This gate has a natural awareness coming from the splenic awareness system. It has a natural awareness of the skills of others, of the proficiencies that they have. And it's able to instinctively select the right person for any job. This is the archetype of the personnel manager. As with all the splenic gates, there is a fear, and the fear in gate 44 is the fear of past experiences catching up to you, or past baggage catching up with you. The past somehow ruining the future. And this is where you can tie in with putting some value on the skills and proficiencies of others, because if you can get that right, then that's going to secure your future a little bit. And so your past mistakes are going to be mitigated somewhat by getting it right now. And then we leave the splenic center for this lunar cycle, and we move into the G center. And we have gate 1. The moon transits into gate 1 at 2:09 tomorrow morning. This is the creative, the gate of self-expression. And it's the gate of direction that has the drive to express itself in a unique and creative way. And it doesn't have any concerns for outside opinions. It's individual. It's just, it's doing its thing. And if it's doing it, well, not even if it's doing it correctly, because generally this is how it's seen, is that it's about empowerment. We see people doing their own thing, and that can be so empowering for us. Their example can then bring us into a place where we can express our own unique individuality. And we have a channel here at the moment because Uranus is in gate 8. And this is the channel of inspiration. This is the design of a creative role model. And it's a channel that has a mission, the mission to be creatively different from anybody else. It's a very brave channel in many ways, because you do need courage to stand out from the crowd and to be yourself, especially when you're individual and you're not always expressing yourself in the way that the collective would like you to express yourself. But this is where, in standing up to be counted, you can become a role model. We need our role models. Thank you very much for joining me on this transit report. I will see you again tomorrow, and we will explore the second line of gate 4. But for now, thank you, and go gently.